Welcome, everyone. Come over from Sydney. One of my favourite places is Perth. It's got a real soft spot for Perth. I always have a great time at MAWA. It's probably been 5 years since I've been here, so awesome to be back. For those who don't know me, my name is Jebara. I also go by Mo. I am the founder and CEO of Mathspace. Hands up if you use Mathspace at your school. Okay, it might be easier to say hands up if you don't use Mathspace at your school. Okay, so there's some people who are new to Mathspace, some people who already know about it. Today, I'm going to be introducing some of the things that we've worked on at Mathspace, but I wanted this to be more a general introduction to large language models as well, so that everyone can get something out of this, whether you're using Mathspace or not, and really to encourage you all to make use of this amazing technology that is going to really change the world. Give you a bit of behind the scenes, like how it actually works, and get an intuition for how it works. And then discuss a little bit of what we're doing at Mathspace with this really powerful technology. Okay, before I start, it's been a very difficult time in the Middle East at the moment. It's a place that's near and dear to my heart. And I got a message from a friend of mine, and I thought I would just, I'll read it out to you. So, Assalamu alaikum means peace be to you, Akhi means brother, so peace to my brother. I just received news that my uncle and his 2 sons have been martyred in an Israeli bombing. Please let your community know, and please make dua, which means prayer for them. So, it's a difficult time, and I was kind of tossing up whether I should bring this up or not, but my community is the maths teacher community. And I've been asked to kind of share this with my community, and so I just want to kind of increase the awareness of what is going on overseas, and maybe we, all of us can kind of make a prayer for what is happening over there, and hopefully things will turn for the better. So with that, I want to move on and really focus on Mathspace. I just felt like I had a kind of obligation to do that. And who are we at Mathspace? We believe that every student can excel at maths with the right help at the right time, and why we exist is we want to be the right help at the right time for every student. Those of you who have seen Mathspace would have seen the kind of evolution of Mathspace over the years. We really continue to innovate and work closely with teachers to bring the best in technology. And today we'll be talking about the biggest innovation to come in the 12 years that I've been working on Mathspace with these large language models. That innovation, the best kind of innovation, always happens when we co-design solutions with educators. And that's something that we really work really closely with. Anyone who's used Mathspace for a long time will kind of attest to how we really take their feedback on board and just how much the product has evolved over time. That's something we definitely want to continue to do, especially with this big new innovation that's coming out with large language models. Because we've got a really strong belief that technological innovation on its own is great, and educator innovation on their own are great, but the real power to transform education happens when they're working together. We have these big technological advancements together with the practical application of educators in the classroom. And hopefully after the session today, you'll get a bit of a taste of where that can lead and what the future classroom might look like. Okay, I had a poll set up, actually Joel set that up, to just ask how many people are familiar with large language models, and more than half said I got no familiarity at all, just over half. And then only one person said is very familiar with it, who was in the crowd is very familiar with it, and the rest of them said somewhat familiar, for those who answered the poll. Thank you for participating. So today, there's a lot I can get through, and it's all super interesting. At least I find it super interesting. We can geek out a lot on how these large language models work. I wanted to get a bit of a show of hands of where I should focus on the most. What's interesting to you? So what are large language models and how do they work? Why should you care as an educator? How we're using GPT-4 and large language models there at Mathspace today. And then hopefully you'll get a chance to build a useful chatbot in 5 minutes to get like a real practical application of how you can actually do this on your own. It's not that hard to get started on this. I might try with raise of hands. Those first 2 points, what are large language models and how do they work? Who's interested to find out more of the detail and get an intuition behind that? Okay, good. And why should you care? Who's interested to know about that? Okay, about the same. How we're using GPT-4 at Mathspace. Okay, that one's probably most exciting for people. And then let's build a useful chatbot in 5 minutes. Who wants to get to that? All right. practical, teachers' favourite audience. They always want to know kind of how do I actually practically make use of this. All right, I'll try and whiz through the how do they work because it's some really fun maths in there. It's one of the biggest innovations of our time. Well, it is. The year 2023 will forever be remembered as the year large language models changed everything. And I want to give you a bit of a feel for like, yeah, we know ChatGPT is pretty cool, but really it's going to change everything. It really is going to change everything. It's that big an advancement in technology. So it's so, do you want to be a math teacher in the classroom right now, having the ability to grasp how these things work, but just not caring about the thing that really changed the world? I think it's so important for us to have like this curiosity of like, this thing's going to really, it's amazing, it's really going to change things. And I'm a maths teacher and I'm teaching students who are going to live in a whole different world. And I don't really know how these things work. I think it's like, I feel like we've got an obligation as teachers to have at least some intuitive understanding of what's happening behind the scenes. So we'll go a little bit into that. And I'll go through it quite quickly. But I find this super fascinating. Okay, so how does a large language model work? What is this ChatGPT thing? Imagine there's like 600,000 words in the English dictionary, and we just label them all 1, 2, 3, 4. So ace, amazing, appreciative, right down to the 600,000th word zinc. That's not actually the last word, but it's just to give you an idea. Now, how these large language models work is you associate a number with each word. Okay, so hey, how are you could be the number 25, 35, 75. And now, these large language models are just autocomplete. What's the next word? So this is a 2-gram model in machine learning lingo. It's just 2 words. If you have R, what is the most likely next word based on all the words that we've read on the internet that we fed into this model? So we might say, are you, are they, are things, are fine, and we give a percentage, the chances of that being the next word. Okay? And we can build some kind of intuitive understanding of like what the next word will be. Okay, and so here let's say 5%. So the number 75, there's a 5% chance that could be next. And then when you sum all those rows, you end up with 100%. Okay, as you add more words, it starts to get smarter, right? So if you have how are, then how are you, that percentage went up from 5% to 50%. Right? Really high chance based on all the words on the internet. There's a high chance that you is the next word that comes up. Okay, so now we're talking about a 3-gram model, 3 words, and we're guessing the last word in that. Okay, and then a 4-gram model is how, hey, how are. Now there's even higher chance of you being the next word. If you say, hey, how are, it's going to be, hey, how are you is probably the big thing, or maybe, hey, how are things. So this is a 4-gram model. So what happened that now suddenly these things, people have been working on this for a long time. It's not something that's just been working on the last couple of years. These autocompletes have been around for 50 years. What made 2023 or 2022, this like new explosion of ability of these models. There was a paper written in 2017 or 18 called Attention is All You Need. And what it basically did is it allowed us to scale these little 1-gram, 2-gram, 3-gram models into 1,000-gram models really fast and really efficiently with compute. So now we're talking about words where you have 1,000-word context and you're guessing the next word. Suddenly you can get some pretty smart as you go through that. And imagine now you're reading a novel and you know the 1,000 or 10,000 words leading up to that last word in the novel. And then the final thing is, and then she went to blank, right? You could, if you want to guess that last word, and that word happened to be Pluto, based on the context of the whole novel, and then she went to Pluto. Now, normally you would never guess that Pluto would be the next word there. But if you've got 10,000 words of context, you know that whole story, then Pluto is going to be the best fit based on that novel that's gone on because that novel's about traveling to Pluto, right? So that's how these large language models work behind the scenes and why they got so smart, as we've been able to scale so much more data going in with the more thing and so much faster to compute what these next words are. But that's really all they are. So with this attention, what happens now, the fact that, so this attention means that you're able to focus on not just all the words, but just the particular parts that are relevant. So we have my dog's name is Ben. He is a big dog with large paws. Ben likes to play. What's the next word? Now, normally, if you just say play, maybe the next word might be soccer or football, then play fetch will probably be right down low. But if you have the context that Ben is a dog, because you know that history, then play fetch seems like a really interesting next word that fits in place there. That's what GPT is. That's what ChatGPT is. It's an autocomplete. It's what's the next word? But it's super smart because it's read the internet and it focuses on the right parts of the internet, and we have heaps of compute going in. Okay? What about creativity? So how does it actually be creative with what it actually spits out? Anyone who's kind of asked it to write an essay or write a poem, it's like, it is super creative. It's amazing what ChatGPT can do. So one of the things that's added to this is called temperature in machine language models. So if you have a temperature of 0, it just gives you the next best word based on the statistical models. So, hey, how are you? I am fine would be the last word there as the best, maybe with a 60% chance of that being the next word. We'll always just pick the best one. But what these machine learning models have is they have this temperature where they say, well, let's actually have a distribution where you don't always pick the absolute best next word. We actually use a distribution. So if there is if you have a temperature of 30, you might actually give a higher chance of using a different word like how are they. It's not necessarily the best word, and that means that it's not deterministic. If you ask it a question, write me an essay on some topic, it'll write, and then if you ask it again, it can write something different. It won't be exactly the same every time because of this temperature. It's actually using a distribution to pick the next word as it goes through. All right? And every time it picks one word, and this is why when you use ChatGPT, it spits out one word at a time. When it spits out that one word, it reanalyzes, so based on the word that it just spat out, right? And they're not exactly a word, it's a token, which is could be 1 to 2 words on average. Or I think slightly less than a word on average. They're called tokens, but we don't need to know about that detail. We can kind of assume that it's just a word. Every time it spits out a word, it says, now that I've spat out that word, what's the best next word? That's all it's doing. It's just a statistical parrot that has a semblance of unbelievable intelligence as you go through. And then as you increase the temperature even more, you might get something like, how are animals? And it's where it starts, as you increase the temperature a lot, these kind of can be quite unhinged, how are animals? That could be a statement, but it'd probably be very rare that that kind of thing would come out. And it's interesting, it's kind of some of the most creative people might be that little bit kind of unhinged and crazy as and that's kind of what you're simulating here. Okay, so you've got that large language model, but how do we go about steering it? In GPT-3, this is how it was steered. It's just an autocomplete. So in GPT-2, GPT-3, as you're kind of steering it, it's just an autocomplete the next word. But if you frame it as Q, what is the capital of France? A, what's next? It might give you Paris is the capital of France. Right? But that's how it was initially steered. Actually just entering a Q and an A, and now it says, what's the next word? Well, based on everything I've read on the internet, when you have a Q and an A, the best next word is going to be the answer. And that's how we kind of got this kind of question-answer response as you're going through. And then that was GPT-3, and it was kind of interesting statistical parrot, really great autocomplete, but not really useful until we can steer it. And then these are words now used in machine learning language, SFT and RLHF. You might have heard RLHF, kind of what the hell is that? It's supervised fine-tuning and reinforced learning with human feedback. So when you hear these words, what are they? Supervised fine-tuning basically is to collect the demonstration data and train under a supervised policy. So it's a prompt is sampled, a label that demonstrates desired output behavior. It's basically question and answer format by a human expert. So what is the capital of France? Paris is the capital of France. On a whole bunch of questions, a whole bunch of data, human input on what kind of outputs do we want. So maybe thousands of data sets that are human curated with the kind of model that we want. And that's where ChatGPT 3.5 started to become a lot more useful. And then the next part was reinforcement learning with human feedback. So that first part is it's human collated data. The second part, we actually get the model to give data. So we ask it a question, such as explain reinforcement learning to a 6-year-old. And then it outputs 4 different responses, let's say. And then we get humans to rank the responses and say which one we like best. Okay, so output A, B, C, D. A human comes in the loop and says D is better than C, is better than A, is better than B in terms of the responses, and it gives it kind of a reward model. So it's like, oh, now I've learned that D is the kind of response I should be giving. In the future, when somebody asks me these types of questions, I will weight it more towards those kinds of responses, right? And so that's how, and this is how safety is built into the models. Because if it's read everything on the internet, and you ask it, how do I make a bomb? It can tell you how to make a bomb, right? It knows. It's read everything on the internet. I'm sure I'll find in some corner of the dark web somewhere how to make a bomb and what materials you should buy to make explosives. But with this reinforcement learning with human feedback, we've trained it to say, as a large language model, I won't tell you how to make a bomb, which I'm sure you've seen if you've used the ChatGPT where it kind of thing. So safety is actually built in from the human feedback that we do as we go through. Otherwise, these things could be really unhinged and very dangerous in terms of like the information they could give whoever wanted to use it. So that's basically how these models work. So why is everyone surprised? Why did no one see it coming? Just quickly, if anyone's interested in doing this, getting into this in more detail, is fascinated by this, I have stolen a bunch of these slides from a Spotify presentation in June on AI. It's available on YouTube. Jump on, look at it. It's the best presentation I've seen on giving you an intuitive understanding without really diving deep into the maths. So feel free to kind of go deeper into that. Why is everyone surprised? Why did no one see it coming? The scale and speed. So this is the amazing thing is nobody saw this transformer architecture, which that attention is all you need. No one saw just how quickly we'd be able to expand this. And nobody saw that what they call emergent capabilities of these models. So these models are just statistical parrots, right? And that's when they're just autocompletes. There's nothing special about them. But as you increase the size of the model and gave it more data and gave it more compute, so just more machines to actually run this, it becomes like a neural network in the brain. You've got all these kind of connections in there to all these words. What's the best next word? It starts to actually build reasoning, and nobody expected this. Nobody expected that it actually is able to reason. And you'll see if anyone uses GPT+, the GPT 3.5 is the free one that everyone has access to. There's GPT-4 is GPT+, which costs $20 a month. That one has just additional compute, additional data, and it has so much more potential when it comes to reasoning. It does a decent job at mathematics. I won't say great yet, but it does a decent job at mathematics, whereas ChatGPT 3.5 does a pretty terrible job at mathematics as go through. So nobody saw these emergent reasoning just by, if you throw it more data, if this brain now knows a lot more information, when it picks its next word, it can actually reason about why that is the next word, right? Which is something nobody saw that coming, and that's where the intelligence starts to come into this. Nobody saw the ability for this to be creative. Everyone thought with AI, the first jobs we'd get rid of are the non-creative jobs, the repetitive jobs, the kind of autonomous robots kind of jobs. But this is really creative, especially when you see what it can do in terms of images and things like that. It's like designer jobs, coding, the ability for it to code. Nobody ever thought that machines would quickly learn how to code. It's incredible how good they are at coding. And then the steering, the ability to steer, so that supervised fine-tuning and the reinforcement learning with human feedback gave us the ability to steer these models to make them practically useful. Okay, I've gone a lot into this. You can watch that Spotify presentation if you want to see the rest of it. It's all really super interesting, but I'm going to skip ahead and go into the why should I care, because we want to get into the practical side more today. Okay. It's not real intelligence. That's okay. It's a really smart thing. It's clever. It can spit out nice essays for you. Why should I care? This is probably the moment where I realized, oh crap, we should really start caring about this. The blue bars that you see there is GPT 3.5, and the green bars are GPT 4. Okay, so let's look at this one here that had the biggest improvement. You see my mouse. Uniform bar exam. This is the legal exam in the US. GPT 3.5, you throw it the question, say what's the answer? It got like 10%. GPT 4, you throw it the question, you say what's the answer? It gets like 90%. Okay, so what changed from GPT 3.5 to GPT 4? Did we write a whole bunch of nice new algorithms? Did we write a whole bunch of new lines of code? Not that much. What we did was throw more data, more compute. More computing power, more data. That's it. Right? This is the part that just makes everyone go, what? Like, there wasn't some huge advancement in the mathematics. There wasn't a huge advancement in human capabilities that made this happen. This was just more data, more compute, and it's getting smarter. And I talked before about maths, so let's look at one of these SAT math. So like high school math in the US, end of high school, I think, SATs, 70% gone up to 90% from GPT 3.5 to GPT 4. Right? So this is kind of like the ability to reason. Math is a good measure of the ability to reason. AP calculus, someone's talking about more university level maths, GPT 3.5, 0, could not do it at all. GPT 4, 45%. Still not really great, you're not going to be your university math tutor yet, but the speed of improvement. Now GPT 5 is being worked on, the Gemini model Google is working on. What they're doing here is they're buying all the compute in the world. There's a mad rush to buy these H100s, the latest in computers, and just throwing in more data. And data, they're even talking about synthetic data now. So synthetic data meaning GPT, or these large language models, can create their own data. You ask it a question, it creates data. And then using that data, feed it into the model again. So you can just make these models bigger and bigger and bigger, and throw more compute and more compute and more compute, and they're just getting smarter and smarter and smarter as they go through, right? And this is where you start to go. At the moment, everyone says, people who are deep in this space say, I haven't seen yet that it's going to plateau. At the moment, all we're seeing is that the more compute, the more data, the smarter it's getting. And it's getting these emergent capabilities. So that's what I mean by emergent capabilities, like things that we never predicted would happen, like the ability to reason and do math. Okay, so should you care? Is this going to change the world? What are some of the practical applications? Yeah, this is why we're starting to think about, like, what does the world look like when AI can do everything that humans can do? Okay, if you're still not convinced, that's just language, but you can use the same techniques for images, because an image is basically what RGB value fits best in the next pixel, right? So the same kinds of models, you're just saying, what's the best fit? Just like we say, what's the best next word? We're saying, what's the best next color in this pixel that makes my model happy, right? And audio is like, what frequency, wavelength, and amplitude fits best in the next millisecond to make the best sound to make my model happy. And that's how you can generate music, and that's how you can generate text-to-speech as you go through. So this doesn't just affect language. All those great images that you see, all the audio that you see, the text-to-speech that you see, the translation software, etc., all that. And then, of course, writing code. There is so much code going around open source public data. So feed that code into these models with these large compute, and pretty good at guessing the next word to write code as you go through. So once you have these AI agents that can write code, then it becomes like, that's where people are starting to think about the doomsday scenarios in Terminator and all those, like, that's actually, could happen now. Of course, it's not without, there used to be sci-fi, like, yeah, not going to happen. It's like, there's actually a pathway where we can see these things might actually, there's a pathway for them to cause all kinds of damage and challenge humans and all of that. So I think all of you probably would have seen a little bit of this, but I've got a couple of examples for you if you're still not convinced. I just said, give me a picture to celebrate maths teachers at a conference learning from each other. And it's a pretty good picture as you go through. So, I generated that in like 10 seconds. And then I said, make it in the style of Rembrandt. And I forgot to add the T to Rembrandt. And there you have it there. And like zoom in and you can see the detail there. Like in 10 seconds, it can create a Rembrandt, right? Remarkable, insane, right? What's happening behind the scenes? It's read every image on the internet and said, what's the next pixel? That next pixel, what color should I make it? When you make every little pixel the right color, you get a Rembrandt. That's what we would look like in a couple of 100 years ago, going around doing our math. I don't think anyone was talking about the machines taking over back then. So one of our developers sent me this one day, and I was like, what the? There's a video that I did years ago where we were doing a math challenge in the US, and we had some prize money and things like this. It was a promotion that we're doing in the US. This is me doing it in the Spanish language.
Este año hacemos un desafío de maestros de matemáticas diferente a otras competencias. Normalmente, en competencias de matemáticas, premias el logro estudiantil y destacas a los mejores. El desafío del profesor basado en matemáticas recompensa a los profesores.
Okay, could anyone guess that? That looks so real, right? I do not know a word of Spanish, just in case you got confused by that. I sent it to a couple of friends when he first sent me to do this, and I was like, oh, I did this cool little thing. I was reading off a teleprompter. What do you think of my Spanish? And they were like, wow, your Spanish is amazing. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not me. I don't care how big the teleprompter is in front of me. I'm not going to be able to do that. So syncing audio, translation is just what word is next, comparing thing. Audio is just frequency, wavelength, etc. And then pixels, mouth movements with the audio, right? So they're all those things, and you put it all together, and you can generate this. Of course, what this means for like the 2024 US elections, who knows, right? You're gonna fake news is like a whole new level. It's like you can no longer trust any video that looks so real. So obviously very scary in terms of like those implications of what happens there. Are you convinced yet that this is going to really change the world at 2023? Are you glad that you know a bit about the behind the scenes and you can answer questions from your students? All right, so this has been a helpful session? Great, all right, vote us up on the things. I got a question, yeah.
How is that done? Is that used for ChatGPT?
No, there's a program, I think it's called HeyGen.
HeyGen?
Yeah, I think it's called. Might be wrong with that name, but yeah, have a look at it. But yeah, behind the scenes, they're using large language models. Yeah.
So with all the data scraping, how is the copywriting and the intellectual?
Yeah, huge ethical concerns about that. A lot of designers going like, hey, you've used my designs to make this DALI that generates those images. You're actually using all the designs on the internet. It's a big open question on like how people deal with this. Microsoft has a program called Copilot, which helps write code, and they're using everybody's code to help it train it to how to write code. So, and there's big ethical concerns over like, well, is that allowed? Like, how do we reward the people whose code you use, whose designs you use to do that?
Surely that would have massive mental health implications for the actual generation.
100%. If you want to start to think about like where this is going, it's very concerning. Like, there's already been huge mental health implications with just social media and kids being addicted to online platforms. What happens in a world where you can't tell what's real, what's fake? When you have the metaverse, where you have people in their headsets who stay at home and live in an imaginary world and it looks so real and all of that, I was chatting with Michael, the keynote speaker, yesterday. He came to the booth and we were talking all things AI, and we started talking about what does the future look? Do people have human relationships anymore? Do people prefer to have an AI boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, because you don't have to deal with the human complexities? You've got the perfect kind of person, all these kinds of things. Like, I don't know, it could be very dystopian. So it scares the crap out of me, to tell you the truth. But even though it scares the crap out of me, and if I had the choice, I would just put the whole thing on pause and just be like, well, let's really understand this before we know what we're releasing to the world. I don't know if you know, there was an AI pause, an open letter where a lot of tech leaders were asking for a 6-month pause on AI just to kind of get our heads around it. I was a signatory onto that, but not that I matter, like Elon Musk was a signatory onto that. I believe we should pause it. But I also think it's not going anywhere. That's like a moral position that I'd like to take, that I think we should pause and really think about it. Practically, it's not going away. This is just full steam ahead.
Do you think that it will replace us as a messenger?
No. I think maths teachers are very, very safe, so you don't have to worry. But maths teachers' roles will change a lot. So we'll talk about that a little bit and think about what it is that you provide. I think it's a human connection. That's going to be the biggest thing, is that the human connection that we provide. So I'll move on. We'll save some time for questions and answers at the end, but I want to make sure I get you all set up for the practical applications. Okay, so this is all a bit scary, as you can see from the questions. We're convinced it's going to change everything. Where do I start? What should I do? I'll tell you a bit about what we did at Mathspace. My advice is just start, and good things will happen. This thing is dangerous, and we need good people, we need competent people, we need to be at the forefront of shaping what it looks like. We need teachers involved to shape what it looks like in the classroom, so it's not just kind of like happens to us. So that's my kind of position. Like, even though I don't like it, where it could go, we have to take that first step, experiment and learn, and really make sure that we put all the good applications of AI into education, into our lives, into everything that we do, and not just kind of sit by while all the bad applications of AI come to us. So we can be a bit more proactive, and especially like take our lessons from social media and the dangers of that, and think about how we can counterbalance that. So what did we do at Mathspace? And I want to demonstrate to you that good things will happen with experimentation. So on February 10, there was an announcement that GPT+. I saw that graph with the blue bars and the green bars, and I was convinced. I sent a message to our team on Slack, our internal communication channels, to everybody the next month in March, and I said, this will change everything. I want everybody to be exploring use cases. I was meant to make a short video, ended up being 15 minutes, so I just kind of blabbered on about like how important this is. And I got everyone access to ChatGPT Plus that day, and I said, everybody gets access to it, we'll pay $20 a month, start using it in your work every single day. And I recommend everybody here does that. Hands up if you have access to ChatGPT Plus. Only a few, right? The biggest technology of our time. So much better than the blue bars, the green bars that you saw there. It's going to be amazing at helping you do everything. It's going to make your work a lot better. Hands up if you're not busy as a teacher. This is a teacher aid right there to help you do all kinds of tasks. And I want to give you some practical tips before we go today to give you an idea of how you can use it. Every single person should leave here and get their principal, hopefully, to pay for their ChatGPT Plus subscription. But if not your principal, it is 100% worth the $20 a month. It will save you hours and hours every month, right? Buy ChatGPT Plus, get access to the latest stuff, right? There's one takeaway today, and I'll show you the kind of practical applications of why you should do it. Okay, this is not something to skimp on, $20 a month, I don't need to do that. It's not whiteboard markers and things like that for your class. This is going to really actually improve your life. Okay, so that's the first thing you do. Now, how has it been received in the classroom? Of course, oh my God, ChatGPT, everybody's going to cheat. Let's not use it. Let's pretend students don't know about it. But more and more, like, hey, this is actually an interesting tool. How do we start using it? Is there a way we can use it for learning? So one thing's for sure, if you're not using it, your students are definitely using it. So this is data from like a month or two ago. I'm sure that number's increased. 70% of 14 to 17-year-olds have used ChatGPT for schoolwork, 60% have used it for schoolwork, 42% have used it in school assignments. I would not be surprised if those numbers have increased significantly over the last couple of months as well since this report was done. And then my big question here is the same question I just asked you. I'm not worried about the 70% of people who are using it. I'm worried deeply about the 30% of people who are not using it, right? They should be using it. This is the biggest technology of our time, right? They should be using it. We want this number to be 100%. We don't want to shy away from it. It's coming. We don't pretend that it doesn't exist. It's there. It's useful. It can also be dangerous. Let's really enhance the useful use cases and try and suppress the dangerous use cases. So I went on a fact-finding mission. I visited over 100 schools. I was in Perth in July with Joel. Visited a bunch of schools here. Went to Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and just visited a bunch of schools and just see, like, where are you at with AI? Spoke to a lot of heads of math, spoke to a lot of principals as well. Where are you at with AI? What are your concerns around it? And these are the top 5 concerns that came out of that. The number 1 concern was cheating. It's like, I want to just suppress it because kids are using it to cheat. None of our assessments make sense anymore. Hallucinations. I'll explain what hallucinations are in a second. Teacher visibility and control. How do I know the students are using it? How do I control when they are and when they're not? Safety. Is it safe to use? They're just speaking to some intelligent being on the internet that's not a human, and who knows what that thing is telling them. And equitable access. If we are going to use it, I kind of need to make sure everyone can use it. How do I make sure, some students might have access to GPT+, some don't. What's the equitable access and the approach there? So cheating, we all know cheating. It's not less of a problem in maths, and a lot of maths teachers tell me like, the English teachers finally have to deal with cheating. Like maths, they've always had calculators. We've always had to develop better assessments and in-person assessments to stop students cheating. So it's something that for maths we haven't really had to deal with that much, but boy, those English and humanities teachers are struggling with the cheating. Hallucinations. Hallucinations is the machine language LLM talk for it makes things up. So here's a kind of humorous example. So these they really suffer. These large language models really suffer from like a lack of confidence. So apparently, based on everything it's read on the internet, the best next word is, I apologize, your wife must be right. Probably based on everything it's read on the internet. But obviously with reinforced human learning and with the supervised learning, these things are getting much, much better as you go through. So how do you kind of train it and give it the context to reduce these just where it makes up facts? You might ask it a question and it just makes up answers. And if anyone's used it for maths, you would have seen the hallucinations that come out of ChatGPT 3.5 where it just makes things up. Sometimes it's overconfident with an incorrect answer, and sometimes it lacks confidence with the correct answer, as you can see over here. So that's hallucinations, and it's definitely something you want to deal with if you're, like us, building an application where you want the answer to be right and you want it to be consistent, not suffer from that. Teacher visibility, just a problem. How do I know that teachers are actually using it? Safety. So we don't, like I said, it's talking to intelligence. Students are out there talking to intelligence, people who can put words together, and who knows what they're talking about. My biggest advice to people is, as a basic rule of thumb, is talk to these beings like they're other humans. So don't say anything that you wouldn't say to another human. Don't share anything that you wouldn't share with another human. That's a kind of good baseline. And particularly important if these AIs do end up taking over, that we've treated them nicely like fellow humans, and hopefully they'll treat us back nicely as well. And then equity. Equity is definitely a problem. So I said we should all get ChatGPT Plus. Okay, that's $20 a month, $20 US a month. Over the course of a year, that's $240 US. Maybe doable for a teacher. It's starting to kind of hits the pocket a little bit for a teacher. Definitely hard for students to be doing that, and you're definitely going to have the have and the have-nots. You're going to have some students like $240 US a year, no problem, my daddy will pay for that. And you have other students who are $240 a year, I'm never going to be able to afford that, right? So that's definitely a problem. And can the school pay for it? Can we pay for it centrally? Well, if you're talking about a 1,000-kid school, there is $250,000. Go and get ChatGPT Plus for every student in your school. Super expensive when you start to look at it that way, right? So these are the biggest concerns talking to. So how did our little experiment go when I said to the team, we're going to just dive in and see what happens? So everyone started using ChatGPT at Mathspace, and we kind of merged them together, and Milo was born, and you saw our little cutout. Milo's our new character at Mathspace that leverages ChatGPT. So just through a whole bunch of experimentation, everybody getting on board with it, we managed to really go, okay, what's a really good use case for using this, and working really closely with teachers to see that. So this is probably a good time to get into what it looks like at Mathspace. And I know a bunch of you use Mathspace and would be interested to know that. Here is an example of the kinds of things that we're aiming for at Milo. This isn't actually a real conversation. This is kind of our prototype of what it looks like. And basically, the difference is Mathspace has always had step-by-step support with hints, but the hints have always been one way, right? So you get stuck on a question, you ask for a hint. Mathspace, we've got this our teaching team has written these hints. we give it to you, and guess what? About 50% of the time, they're helpful. And the other 50% of the time, the student's going like, Mathspace, you and your hints. I'm more confused than I was before you gave me that crappy hint of yours, right? So it's great. We help 50% of students to get that next step, but there's also 50% of students who are like frustrated with Mathspace and the crappy hint that Mathspace gave because who knows, like it's not really necessarily at their level. So what changes here? We've already kind of been in this model of like wanting to provide step-by-step support to students. All we've had to do now is say, can we make it a two-way conversation? If they don't get that hint, can they follow up and ask a follow-up question? And then maybe we can reduce the frustration with that hint and simplify the language and all of that might come with that. Takes a bit of training for the students to get used to, like, hey, I can actually ask it a question. I didn't get some of that hint. Okay, ask. What part didn't you get in that hint? And we'll do a little live demo in a second as well so we can see what that looks like. So how do we address the 5 points? Cheating. If you say, what's the answer? We've steered Milo to say, I know it's tough, let's break it down, let's focus on the next step. It won't give them the answer. So that's how we stop cheating, right? If they were to dump this question into ChatGPT would just give them the answer. We've got ChatGPT integrated in where it won't give them the answer because we've added extra steering inside it. Hallucinations, so that where it just makes things up and either suffers a severe lack of confidence or overconfidence in its responses. At Mathspace, we've got these thousands of questions. For each question, we've got step-by-step support and pre-built hints that we've done as a team. So math teachers have already kind of trained on every question. We feed that into ChatGPT and Milo, and that makes Milo a whole lot smarter with the kinds of responses that it gives back and with marking the correctness of the responses. So that's a way where we can reduce the amount of hallucinations that happen. They still happen. We still see some cases where it's like, Milo, what are you doing? That's just the wrong answer. You're giving the wrong hint there, but it's reduced significantly from just, if you went to ChatGPT and asked the question, it'd be pretty bad. Milo's a lot better, and we continue to steer it. We also have the ability to turn off Milo on and off for a particular question. So where we see Milo's not yet capable of doing that level of maths, we turn it off and we default back to our previous hints. So we have a way to kind of control like where we have the double chat, the two-way chat, and where we roll back to just the one-way hints that we had before. So that's how we deal with hallucinations. Teacher visibility. Every chat in Milo, so we're building this soon, you'll be able to see all the chats that a student has had when you look at their reports. And then you'll be able to dig in and see every question, the whole chat that the student has as they go through. Okay, on safety, we have another AI behind the scenes that pre-reads the message before Milo does and intercepts it if it's a dangerous conversation, so Milo doesn't respond. So if they ask, if they swear or something like that, it says this message has been flagged, it goes to our support team. If it's our support team, God bless them, they're reading through all these, I'm going to burn down the school. We don't get these. We get a lot of like, WTF. You suck, Milo, and they get flagged. So the student gets a little warning. Our support team, God bless them, pray for them. They read those, and if it's worthy of escalating, we'll send something to the teacher and we'll turn off Milo for that student. So if they're, having suicidal thoughts, right? That's the kind of thing that we're worried about students having these because it's an AI agent on the other side. We'll block that, we'll flag them, and then we'll say, we better turn this off and flag it with their teacher. Very rare. I think we've had like a couple of cases where we've had to actually flag something and turn it off for students. We have to read through them all. So we get a lot of reading through them all. And then equity. So equity has always been a big part of Mathspace, our commitment to equity. From day one, we always wanted Mathspace to be something that's improves maths education for everybody. We want to be the right help at the right time for every student. And so we've made Milo free while in beta in 2024 as we've kind of been testing it out. There is a cost to us, so that $20 a month that goes through for ChatGPT. Milo uses an API. Every time a student asks for a hint, if we ping the ChatGPT OpenAI APIs, and there's a cost, it's like 2 cents or something. It's like really small as you go through, and then that adds up over the year. We've actively sought out diverse learners for beta testing because not everyone can afford this. And we've made the decision to provide it as an optional add-on. So we don't want to force everybody to pay the extra fee that's associated with the API calls, and we've made the decision to also provide it at cost. So how much does it cost us? We average out how much people use it across our cohort, and we've made okay, we're just going to pass that cost on, and it's going to be optional. So the more people that use it, we obviously will charge more. The more people that don't use it. So that's our commitment to equity. So we don't want this to be forced upon you. It's an option. If you think it's good, you can use it. And we've been pricing it at $10 in our testing, looking at across the whole range, $10 per year per student. So instead of $20 per month per student, $20 US per month per student to access ChatGPT and all of ChatGPT Plus, we've got the specific application inside Maths where we've done all this training and all this work to make it a really great use case inside Mathspace for $10 per user per month. But I did mention, oh yeah, I think I have an announcement on the next slide. What are the results so far? Student engagement increased by 30%. Accuracy after chatting with Milo increased by 20%. So it used to be 50%, where if we give you a hint, 50% of the time it was helpful, 50% of the time it wasn't. It's actually 53% of the time it was helpful. That's gone up to 73% of the time it's helpful, where they can have a two-way chat. Because they can continue to ask another question, so their correctness after using hints has increased. And engagements increased by 30%. People prefer to use the hints when they can talk to Milo instead of just maths-based computer sending you a hint. It feels more conversational. And this is the highest we've ever had by far. Students are a tough crowd. 68% of students would miss Milo if it was taken away. That's more than double any other feature we've ever released. So students actually like Milo, and that's hard to get students to like anything on Mathspace. They're a tough crowd. So that's the first time we ever released anything where it's like more than 50% of students would get very upset if we got rid of Milo. So big announcement today. I mentioned that we've got a commitment to do it at cost. Last week, OpenAI reduced their prices for GPT-4 API, and we're going to pass that cost saving on because that was our commitment. So instead of $10 per student per year, it's going to be $5 per student per year to access Milo. So anybody here who uses Mathspace at their school, and for the rest of this year, go and try it out and see what it looks like. If it is helpful, just $5 per student for the entire year. When you think about the value associated with that, and I'll do a quick demo of Milo in a second, you can see just it's really great value for money. Okay, so let's have a look at a quick example. You can come and have a play with Milo at the booth as well with Joel, and have a look at how it works. So this is what it looks like inside Mathspace. We've got Roll makes a drink combining 4 1/8 litres of water with 1 1/5 litres of cordial. So instead of just, you can still ask for a hint, you can still watch a video and examples. We've always had those inside Mathspace. We've actually increased our video content significantly. Every second question in Mathspace now has a video. So lots and lots of video help inside Mathspace now because we know a lot of students find them really helpful. So do I just add them? Let's go through. Yes, you need to add the two mixed numbers together. First, let's break each mixed number into a whole number and a fraction. You go through. Now add the whole numbers and the fractions separately. Okay, pretty good hint, right? And you can do follow-up with that. One of the frustrations with Mathspace and where this is really powerful is if in Mathspace you want to show you're working and you just say 5, for example, so 4 plus 1 is 5, we're going to mark you wrong, right? But if you ask Milo, because you're kind of like a bit unsure, and you put 5 in there, and Milo says, that's correct for the whole numbers. So positive reinforcement that you're on the right track. So you can kind of really reduce the frustration with Mathspace is so pedantic about the right answers because we can't mark you right if you put 5 here. Our math engine's not smart enough to do that, to say, oh, you've actually answered just part of the question. But this large language model is smart enough to say, oh, you've answered part of the question. So this becomes like a safe space with a tutor helping you out as you work through the problem. And then Mathspace does the grading as you go through, and so you can kind of like do your working out here and then transfer your answer into there. If you just ask for the answer, can I just get the answer? This is the most common input that we get from students. And we've got the steering. As a math tutor, my goal is to help you. Let's continue with finding the least common multiple. This will help us add the fractions. And we've got these, like, a lot of students kind of need training on how to ask the right questions. So I've got these why and how, and another hint to kind of help. So I can ask just how, and that would be the same as if they typed how, but it's kind of like training them on how to get good questions. Especially focusing on the why as well, it's kind of interesting. So these are really great hints. Listed out the multiples of 8, listed out the multiples of 5, find the lowest one as you go through. So that's all the things that we have inside Mathspace. So I'll leave you to kind of check them out. We've got another 5 minutes, so I'll quickly go through some of the areas, and then I'll show you a very quick example of how to build your own. So the space is developing really fast. So some things that are coming pretty soon into Mathspace that we're actively looking into, supporting chat for questions with images. So you've got a question like this with an image in there. You can actually ask questions like where do I start? And we're training it on the actual image in there. So Milo can give you back and forth feedback on questions with images. So that's really exciting that you'll be able to, at the moment, we don't turn on Milo for images because it doesn't understand the image, but we're training it now on the images that are in there as well. Text-to-speech.
The latex code you provided translates to the following mathematical expression in words. 1/2 times x squared plus the square root of 5 plus y. This expression represents a combination.
Okay, so speaking maths has always been a challenge. Not far off solving that, where you can actually speak out the maths, and then once you speak out the maths, we can speak out, especially as Milo writes a paragraph of text. For those that might have reading difficulties, we're going to add text-to-speech in there, and I can just be like, read it out to me, and it'll read it out, and it'll read out the maths as well that might be involved in that expression. Translation to another one.
Here is the translation to Spanish. El código LaTeX que proporcionaste se traduce a la...
I don't know if that's accurate, but I'm fluent, remember? Getting it to output diagrams is something we've started to explore, really interesting area. Instead of just kind of like, subtract x from both sides of the equation, can you imagine we start to do things like this in the hints? Super powerful, right? That's an area we've started to actively explore. You ask for a hint, it doesn't just say write it in words, but could it actually give you something like this? Basically, we're writing code to generate a nice video on the fly for the student. Right? So stay tuned, right? It might be a while before we have this, but I envisage stuff that in the next year we'll have built in. Let's build our own ChatGPT. So everybody go and get GPT Plus, and we're going to create our own ChatGPT if you have GPT Plus. And you're all going to get it straight away as soon as this conference is over, because I've convinced you. So really quickly, I know we're short on time. You can create a ChatGPT over here. You basically tell it what you want. So help me write a comment to parents based on my student's report in Mathspace. Okay, so I'm creating my own chatbot inside GPT Plus. Okay, it says, great, I'm going to call it Mathspace Comment Assistance. Okay, happy with that. That's a pretty poor name, Mathspace Comment Assistance. Okay, so it updates and it configures my ChatGPT to build this tool for me, this chat tool. It even generates a nice profile picture for me. See what that looks like. I'm can't wait to see the image that comes out of this. So it's using DALL-E, the image service. There we go, look at that. My little chatbot with a calculator tool. Are you happy with that for your chatbot? Yeah, I'm happy. Okay, and we can kind of continue to steer it to build this chatbot. Here's one I built earlier because we're out of time. Mathspace Report Buddy, much better name, with a kangaroo as the thing. So I've built my own ChatGPT here, and I've basically trained it to say, what I want you to do is take a report on Mathspace, because there was a teacher yesterday who was telling me that they manually went through and spent an hour looking at the reports on Mathspace and sending an email to parents to encourage their students to do more independent work. And I was floored, and I was like, you're so dedicated, that's amazing. He spends like at least an hour every term for every class doing this, and he does it once a term. And of course he's getting great results because he's putting in that effort. Okay, can we do that ourselves? So let's have a look. Here are, I've got a couple of, do I have them? Okay, so I've pulled out a couple of images from a Mathspace report. Okay, and I'm pasting images here to show you what that looks like. That's a Mathspace report for anyone that's familiar with Mathspace. It's a task report for an individual student on Mathspace. Okay, so I've built a chatbot that takes this task report and says, turn this into a comment for me, for the parent. And come on, Mathspace report, buddy. Live demo is always dangerous. Dear parent, it's a pleasure to share with you the progress of your child. Their commitment is visible in the 277 questions. They've pulled that out of the image. And 25 working days, 11 questions each day. 92% of their work are on assigned tasks. They spend 7 hours and 16 minutes. They're just pulling this from the Mathspace activity report that I've pasted in. So I can now share this chatbot with you, and you can go take a screenshot of your Mathspace student, and it will generate this little comment that you can send this email to your parents. There's things that you can do on top of that where you can attach actions to it and just go send email, and it will send you email from here. Right? I didn't go that far. I built this last night. Right? It took me like 15 minutes. Okay, this is the power, and this is what you should be doing for your reports. This is what you should be doing for your lesson plans. This is what you should be doing for your teacher notes. Like, get in there, experiment, good things will happen. That's it from me. Thank you so much for attending.